Okay, we're cutting across to breaking news that's coming in. MHA has issued a reply in Parliament on Major Aditya. MHA has categorically said that it firmly stands with Major Aditya and the army. So the MHA taking a stand in Parliament. In its reply, it's categorically said that it backs the army and also backs Major Aditya in the FIR that was filed by the Jammu and Kashmir police. So a big development that's taken place. Let's go across to Aishwarya Kapoor for more details on this. Aishwarya, give us details of what the MHA has said in Parliament.
But at this very point, Ministry of Home Affairs, in a reply on the floor of the House in the Parliament, have stated that they stand by Major Aditya and then by the Indian Army. They have categorically stated that there were several warnings given by the Army battalion which was present there under the command of Major Aditya, and Major Aditya himself gave several warnings, and it's only as a last resort that he did what he did. The MHA, in its answer, that's an official reply of the Government of India on the floor of the House, has stated this with a particular time frame and said that that the Minister of Home Affairs completely understands that under which circumstance the Indian Army officer did what he did. He did as a last resort, and it has been mentioned in a written reply by the Minister of Home Affairs today. In a reply on the floor of the House, we have been able to access the question and then the reply as well. It says that on the 27/1 of 2018, a convoy of the Indian Army came under heavy stone pelting at village Gonapora in district Shopian. Indian Army personnel exercised restraint and gave repeated warnings to the mob to disperse before opening fire in self-defense. However, in this incident, 3 persons lost their lives and 1 person got injured in this connection, and FIR stands registered in police station Shopian. But the mere verse makes it very clear. It's a written reply of MOS Home, Hans Rajahir, where he states that the Indian Army officials exercised restraint and gave repeated warnings to the mob to disperse before opening fire in self-defense. This one line in itself shows that the Minister of Home Affairs backed the Indian Army and then Major Aditya, and shows that as a last resort of self-defense, the Indian Army personnel opened fire in which 3 individuals lost their lives.
Yes, Aishwarya, we've also accessed that particular MHA reply in Parliament. It's with us right now, and I want to show this to our viewers as well. It states here, I'm reading out of the MHA's reply in Parliament. They've said that on 27th in January, a convoy of Indian Army came under heavy stone pelting at village Ganapara in district Shopia. Indian Army personnel exercised restraint and gave repeated warnings to the mob to disperse before opening fire in self-defense. This is the most crucial line really in this entire reply, and I'm going to read it out for our viewers again. It says the Indian Army personnel exercised restraint and gave repeated warnings to the mob to disperse before opening fire in self-defense. So that is what has been stated in this particular reply, where the MHA has come out to back the army here, saying very clearly it was in firing in self-defense that they did exercise a lot of restraint, but that there was a threat, and that's why they had resorted to the firing. So the MHA is solidly standing behind the army at this point, and in this reply, the MHA has said that yes, the army showed some restraint, and it was only in self-defense that they had to fire at the pelters, recognizing that the pelters didn't move away despite several warnings that were given. These are really the most instrumental words that are used. The Indian Army personnel exercised restraint, gave repeated warnings to the mob to disperse before opening fire in self-defense. So that is the MHA's reply in Parliament. Very crucial. The government has decided to take a stand. They've stuck to exactly what the army statement also has been so far. With the army, remember, has also said exactly this, that the army had shown self-restraint time and again, that the forces present there, Major Aditya, had shown self-restraint, and that this was an act of self-defense because the stone pelting mob didn't move away and continued to target the forces who were present there. So the MHA in its reply has recognized the same in Parliament to a specific question on exactly what happened, has said very clearly that this is a case of self-defense, and this is the first official reply that's come in from the government, from the MHA in Parliament to a question on the same. So this is very, very crucial. And once again, if I can read out to you the exact words that have been used, the army personnel exercised restraint, gave repeated warnings to disperse before opening fire in self-defense. So very, very crucial statement this that's come in from really the MHA in Parliament. And if you've still got Aishwarya, if I can go across to him for more details on this. Aishwarya, in this particular reply, you see how the MHA has very categorically said that the Indian Army personnel exercised restraint. And keep in mind, in the past, when we've had an official word coming in from the army as well, this is exactly what they said. There were warnings that were given. There was a certain amount of caution, certain amount of restraint that was exercised by the army personnel who were present there. And it was only after a certain point, when it was a matter of self-defense, that the personnel present there had to fire. And you've got the MHA sticking to the exact same tone, the exact same line in his reply in Parliament. We're putting out, of course, the version for you there. This is the reply that the MHA has given, where it's categorically said that Indian Army personnel exercised restraint and gave repeated warnings to the mob to disperse before opening fire in self-defense.